but it pretends to love the truth as power and not as impotency or weakness. And the philosophical illusion resides in that, to say that the love of truth is the origin of a new power of knowledge and finally of human existence. The philosophic patient wants to promote a love of truth as power, and that is necessarily a complete failure. The veritable anti-philosophic thesis of Lacan is, if we pretend to love the truth as power, if we occult the fact that any love of truth is love of a weakness, then we will be impotent with respect to knowledge. We will be exposed to the passion of ignorance. And so you see, at this point, the vision of philosophy by Lacan is a vision of an attempt of a love of truth, which is exposed, in fact, as the passion of ignorance. And so the road, the philosophical road to the truth, finally, is a weakness in face of the question of knowledge. In terms of subjectivity, to place a limit to the passion of ignorance in terms of truth, it is absolutely necessary to love in the truth a weakness. The force of the love of truth is being that of the love of a weakness, and that is, finally, the limited love of knowledge. Philosophy is then a precarious disposition with regard to the passion of ignorance. You know, finally, everything in this vision depends on the triplet knowledge, truth, real. That is where the psychoanalytic act justified Lacan's saying, rise up in arms against philosophy. It's because at the end of his career, he was thinking that philosophy is a sophisticated form of ignorance. I stop here and I stay under the accusation.
Difficult to follow. I hope you hear me. Glad to be here. Glad to be with Alain. Of course, in this 20 minutes forum, it's just a little bit too little time to really develop a line of thought. All one can do is more just trace, define positions, oppositions, and so on. I would nonetheless like to begin with reference to what is going on recently in your territory, or just off your territory in Louisiana, because I think it concerns precisely in a way, very oblique way, what Alain was talking about, this gap, distance between the real and the symbolic. I was thinking about, do you know how Freud's Freudian dream of Irma's injection is structured? First, you have this look deep into Irma's throat, the primal horror, distorted flesh. Then you have this sudden passage from the real into the ridiculous impotence of the symbolic, the three doctors exchanging faked arguments. Isn't this going on now in the United States public discourse? The look into the Irma's throat would have been those camera shots that we get of the oil gushing out, and then the three doctors literally exist, you remember in the congressional hearing, as the three representatives who were exactly in the same comical way putting the blame of each other. You know, BP representative or CEO even said, no, it's not me, it's the subcontractor. That Halliburton or whatever, I think it's the big Dick Cheney's company, said, no, we just made the plan, it's our own subcontractor who poured the concrete, who screwed it up. And finally, the last one returned the ball and said, no, but we were just following the plans we got from the other two, and so on. So it's clearly this same constellation, but things are more tragic here. Remember when, I think, unfortunately, even President Obama appeared a little bit of a clown here for me when he pathetically claimed, I will make on behalf of American people, whatever, BP, British Petroleum, pay every cent of the damage and so on and so on. Sorry, this is ridiculous. If the spilling will go on the way it goes, even if so many environment ruined, lives ruined, etc., you simply cannot pay for it. It's ridiculous. It's a little bit, I exaggerate consciously, like to say Germany will pay every cent for the Holocaust and so on. I mean, when catastrophes are too big, it's meaningless to talk in these terms. So we have to rethink it. I remember, here I connected to impossibility of sexual relationship. I remember some 20 years ago, exactly in the same territory, the waters, sea waters south of Louisiana, Ted Kennedy, at that point senator, was caught by a paparazzo in a lone boat. He thought he is alone, only sea around, making love to a lady. I mean, it's a blurred image, but very clear. Her legs spread and so on. Exactly at that point, in the Senate, they were debating offshore drilling. And I laughed how a Republican senator, here I liked it, referring to this said, oh, I noticed that recently Senator Kennedy, who was opposed to it, changed his position on offshore drilling. Well, I'm here for Kennedy, no? I think that the only offshore drilling that should be allowed is the one that Kennedy was involved in, no? Okay, but not too much of this. Lacan and anti-philosophy. You know, I will just try to, again, state my case and not just mark some differences, allowing, hopefully, Alain to strike back. Because as I already developed once in Paris, I think, or London, our relationship is that of a master and the hysteric. He's the master, I'm the hysteric, provoking all the time and so on. It's sometimes difficult to provoke the master. Now, more seriously, I was deeply influenced by his insight into the whole concept of anti-philosophy. Maybe I would just shift a little bit or displace, expand, whatever, my understanding of it. Of course, I totally agree with Kim. We can say already Pascal and so on. But nonetheless, Pascal clearly situated himself outside philosophy. For me, maybe I'm wrong. Where do we have the first breakthrough of anti-philosophy as a philosophical position? Maybe, risky hypothesis, Kantian ethics. It's the first time that you clearly have this position of we have the domain of knowledge or theoretical truth, and then we have access to the real through the ethical act, which is, again, the relationship to the impossible real of thinking itself outside truth. It's also interesting how, speaking about anti-philosophy, did you notice that in the history of philosophy, from that point on of Kantian revolution, practically, not totally, of course, entire philosophy no longer wants to be called philosophy. Kant, it's no longer metaphysics, but transcendental critique of the conditions of metaphysics. Fichte is Wissenschaftslehre, that is to say, teaching on science, not philosophy. Schelling privileges art. Hegel also said no longer love of wisdom, but wisdom itself, not to mention Marx and so on and so on. So my first constatation when Lacan says, je m'insurge contre la philosophie, is, well, welcome to the camp of philosophers. All philosophers from Kant onwards are doing nothing but that, insurging against philosophy. Nobody wants to be a philosopher. And
except me.
Ah, I agree with you. That's my point. Yeah, that's precisely my point. Because would you agree? Now I have a new proposal for you to try to convert you to my cause of the love of German idealism. You know your four domains, okay, conditions, whatever, of where a truth event can occur. Let's enumerate them. Science, politics, art, love. And I deeply agree with Adrian Johnston's reading of you, where he emphasized an aspect of this which is usually ignored, that this people usually just emphasize your opposite point, which is desuture, not totally attach philosophy to one truth condition. But I think, on the other hand, you make a much nicer point, which is even close to some kind of engaged Marxist thinking, which is nonetheless that philosophy cannot stand it on its own. Heroically, you have to attach yourself to a condition. You cannot be philosopher just in the air. And would you agree or not, this came to me, that the same goes for conditions of truth, goes for German idealism. Look, Kant's problem was science, was how to philosophize in the conditions of Newtonian science. Fichte is clearly politics, French Revolution. Schelling is art, and I claim Hegel is love. We have precisely the four guys there. But okay, now let me go on into anti-philosophy. Where do I maybe shift the accent a little bit? For me, I would say that the great breakthrough of anti-philosophy occurs with the so-called anti-Hegelian turn, in its three main forms. First, the late Schelling and the young Schopenhauer, then Kierkegaard, then Marx. I think that all three, in a way, meet your condition. Philosophy is, in all three versions, denounced as caught in its own circle of representation, abstract contextual thinking, and some kind of return to, not the real in the Lacanian sense, but some kind of a positive singular life foundation, which implies a critique of philosophy is enacted. For Kierkegaard, this is the unique existence of religious